Jesus starts with the very basis of life, and then he goes straight to one of the most important relationships, and I don't believe there's a greater relationship that reflects the image of our relationship with God than the marital relationship. And so he's going to talk today about adultery. And he says this: "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery in his heart. But if your right eye makes you stumble, tear out and throw it from you, for it is better for you to lose one of those parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown in hell. And if your right hand makes you stumble, cut it off and throw it from you, for it is better for you to lose one of the parts of the body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell." Now, the word adultery is related to the word adulterate. And it means, according to Webster's dictionary, to render something poor in quality by adding another substance. To render something poor in quality by adding another substance. That's the meaning of adultery, adulterate. So infidelity, adultery, is the adulteration of marriage by adding a third person into the marital union. Adultery is sexual activity between a married person and anyone on the outside of that marital relationship. The emotional, spiritual, and physical relationship between a husband and wife is one of the most sacred of relationships found in the Bible. It is a relationship that God established at creation. And even the relationship between a parent and a child doesn't rise to the level of the relationship between a husband and wife. If you realize this, the fact that the relationship between a parent and child is severed by the introduction of the marital relationship. Bible says, a husband and wife will leave their parents. There's a cleaving that happens between the child and the parents, a separation that's supposed to happen that God built into that. And the two shall become one. They'll leave the parents, and the two shall become one in marital union. So this is a high regarded relationship by God. This is the quote from Genesis. "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." Significant. And Jesus quotes this when the Pharisees and the Sadducees come and attack him or ask him. They're using it as an attack, but they're asking him. Marriage is the most attacked relationship found in the world today. You look at what's happening in our world today, most of the attacks are centered around the marital union between a man and a woman. You can't watch a TV show anymore without being inundated with images that are meant to tie into your sexual nature. I think we've become numb to it. I think we've become impervious to it. Having a 7-year-old boy, I think, has made us more hyper alert to these things. That we don't watch commercialized TV because the level of imagery that is brought into the home through these campaigns is demonic. And so Jesus says, more than any time in history, Jesus' message is so important because he says that the marital relationship, the sacredness of the physical union between the husband and the wife is something that is divinely constructed and divinely ordained not for self-pleasure, not for our own self-gain or our own self-satisfaction, but for the glorification of God. That's a paradigm shift completely in the opposite direction of what the world says sex is designed for and the marital union is designed for. And so Jesus issues such a high standard that it even jumps in the face of first century Palestine. But his intent is to get to the heart of the matter, not just the physical idea of what adultery is. And so we live in a world where marriage is degraded, marriage is diminished, the value of marriage is diminished. It's just a convenience, so to speak. We would say that we would probably define or say, why do we get married? Most people would say because, my spouse completes me. Or we felt like, it just was the good thing. Or you say, why did you get married? Well, something happened, and so we had to get married. That's a common reason why people get married. Other people would say, well, it just works out well for our professional aspirations that we have a mutual, beneficial relationship to be married. That's a common reason why people get married. How many people get married today because they say, well, we wanted to glorify God. We wanted to get together. We felt like God was bringing our union together for a purpose of serving Him, to bring about and rear children in His name, and to fulfill His purpose in our life as one flesh. I don't think as many people as I've counseled, there's been only maybe 2 or 3 couples that have come to me and says, I think God's called us together for the purpose of serving Him. Most of the time, if you get into the real root of why people get married, it's really for selfish reasons. Really, it's because that person fulfills me. Now, anybody can get married. And the slope has grown slipperier and slipperier. Guys and guys getting married, girls and girls getting married, a guy that was a girl getting married to a guy, a girl that was a guy getting married to the combinations are, and we're living in a day when they're saying there's 76 genders. How do you figure that out? We have traveled down a road of absolute insanity. And what has happened, friends, is we've made marriage about as important as choosing which pair of shoes you're going to buy from Walmart. Seriously. Because if it doesn't work out, you write a writ of divorce and move on your way. She stopped fulfilling my needs. Oh well, I'll find another one. I hear commercials about guys, my past 3 trophy wives didn't work out and I've got my 4th, but I'm going to protect my financial interests. That's a commercial. Now we got drag queens teaching children's, priests who are perverts, and we're ordaining homosexuals. That's within the church. 1 in 5 youth pastors and 1 in 5 senior pastors report to George Barna that they use porn on a regular basis. Let me break that down for you. In America, that's 50,000 church leaders in the United States that have unequivocally removed themselves from being qualified leaders in the church. Marriage is so important and so fundamental to society that it can be predicted when society will fall. According to historian J.D. Unwin, who studied 18 civilizations, you see the quote on your screen, every society has 1 of 2 choices, he says. This is not a spiritual man. This is a secular historian. Either sexual promiscuity and decline or sexual restraint and growth. And so hit the pause button for a minute and look around at our society. What do you see? I mean, from the 60s on up to today, for the past 60 years, 60 plus years, we have lived in a normalized society that has said, satisfy yourself, be yourself, love is love, do whatever you want as long as you're happy. There's something wrong with that because it stands in the face of everything God designed. And the reason is because it's demonically driven. It's an agenda of the enemy. It's quite simply. You know, a side note here about the enemy. I mentioned earlier, there are people, I'm hearing this across the board, can't get over the amount of spiritual attack that's happening in our lives right now. Can't get over the amount of spiritual attack that is taking place in our society. I can't believe the amount of spiritual attack that's coming against us. And there's a reason. It's because it's always been there. We have as a society for a long time denied the existence of evil. We denied that Satan was real. We denied that God was real, as a matter of fact. But in a cultural sense, we just kind of pretended like Satan didn't exist. Jesus says the eye is the lamp of the body. So then if your eye is clear, the whole body is full of light. So if we have 1 in 7 senior pastors watching porn online at any given time, what kind of spiritual food are they delivering back? You know, garbage in, garbage out is what they used to say in computer programming. So if you have spiritual leaders in God's church engaging in pornographic activity on a regular basis, what is that going to do to the church? I've counseled so many families where they've come to me and a couple comes to me and they said, well, it's a true story. Well, we found our 10-year-old daughter engaged in sexual behavior with another girl. True story. And I would talk with the couple and meet with them, and inevitably it would come out that the dad was using porn, was watching porn. Every time you introduce that demon into your home, you introduce that behavior, that demon into your home, and you know the Bible says the sins of the father are the sins of the son. So this is not just little boys looking at Playboys. This is a demonic activity that is meant to introduce a spirit into the home that is going to tear down the next generation, and it is. One of the worst things that happened to third world countries, and I remember I was doing a mission trip to the Philippines, and I was talking to the pastor there. He says, one of the worst things that ever happened to us is the internet and smartphones. He says, because all of a sudden, all of our guys who never had access to anything now are introduced to a whole sea of demonic pictures that are meant to demoralize the woman and tear down the heart of men. Satan knows this. And Satan knows that one of the worst ways he can get to guys is through images. And he will, as Jesus says, the eye is the lamp unto the body. And so the way to infiltrate into a man's heart is through the use of images. In the United States, and this is a little dated, so it's probably a little low. In the United States, the pornography is a $10 to $15 billion industry a year. $1 billion. $93 billion worldwide. At any given moment, at any given second on the internet throughout the whole world, there are 28,000 users watching pornographic material. 28,000 every given second. 88% of the scenes portrayed in pornography have physical aggression. And 79% of those who watch pornography claim that they are using illicit drugs, namely marijuana. If Christians are the salt and the light of the world, Jesus expects us to honor the most sacred of societal relationships. Because what Jesus knew before any of this ever came about was that Satan was going to use every arsenal in the world to darken and degrade the human heart. And there are so many that are struggling with this. I have people, guys, that use me as an accountability partner to help them through the struggle. And they have computer programs that they use that report to me everything they go onto the internet. And I've had to call people up and say, hey, why are you on this website? Because sometimes it comes through innocent spots, but the computer program will say, hey, so-and-so just went on this website, and I'll call them up, and I'll call them out. So this is a demonic, the pornography, the use of pornography is as addicting as any drug. So this is a real struggle. And it's important for us as a church to raise our children and raise young men to value the marital relationship and honor each other and honor the opposite sex. Because, listen, porn is not just a man issue, but it tends to go quickly towards men because of the man's nature to be drawn to images. Jesus goes on, so from the sanctity of life to the sanctity of marriage. Interestingly, also in the Jewish law, both are capital crimes. Adultery is a capital crime in Israel, according to the law of Moses. And that's found in Leviticus 20:10. Shows us just how urgent and consequential that this is among the list. This is among the things. Of all the things Jesus could have talked about, first thing he talks about is anger. And we live in an angry world. You don't believe me? Watch YouTube videos of people getting mad at stewardesses on airlines. It is crazy. It's also entertaining, but it's crazy. The number of people, we live in a society that is so angry, especially when they get arrested. They are so upset. We are uptight. And we're seeing this happen. Look, airline travel is stressful. And there's more and more people flying today because we live in the society where we're going to and fro. And so people get stressed out at the airport, and what's the first thing they have by the gates? Bar. So you go, the person's a little stressed about going to fly. That's the first time they've seen Aunt Thelma in Cincinnati. So they go, Aunt Thelma's a little stressful too. So, they're walking to the gate and there's the bar. Well, let's have a couple drinks to loosen up and relax before we get on the flight. Next thing you know, the stewardess says you can't put that bag in this spot. It's too big. And, there are punches being thrown. We live in a society that is so uptight and high-stressed. So, next to murder, Jesus says, we've got to deal with adulterous relationship. I haven't even gotten there yet. I got like 10 minutes to go. The one who commits adultery with a woman lacking a heart of wisdom, he who would destroy his soul does it, according to Proverbs. Marriage is to be held in honor among all, and the marriage bed is to be undefiled. For the sexually immoral and adulterers, God will judge. New Testament. Flee sexual immorality. That should be enough right there. Paul telling the Corinthian church, very immoral area. If you were licentious, they would say in the Roman world, you've been Corinthianized. It was a very high sexually loose. It would be America today, probably. Flee sexual immorality. For every other sin that a man commits is outside the body. But listen to this. The sexually immoral man sins against his own body. What he's saying is that you are tearing your soul apart. Like murder, adultery does not begin with the act. It's a condition of the heart. Jesus says, I say to you, everyone who looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart, just like murder. Every man that is angry with his brother has already committed murder in his heart. Every man or every woman that looks at another with lust in their heart has already committed adultery. Jesus uses the man looking at the woman. He is just using that because of the teaching methods. You can put man or woman, him or her in there interchangeably, not because he thinks there's 76 genders, by the way. It is here in the heart that we must guard ourselves. It is here in the heart that Jesus wants us to take the root of sin out of our lives. Society says the solution is to forego restraint. You got that desire in your heart? Feed it. Right? And that's Satan, just like Edward, rolling the cart of sweets in front of his brother Renaud to keep him fat and trapped in the room. The world is bringing the cart of delicious things that for you to look at and for you to entertain and for you to satisfy your own desires so that you can feel happy. Because you're so unhappy if you're not satisfied. And you can put sex and you can replace sex with anything else that you so desire, by the way. So we can hand out all the stuff we need to in school, assign new pronouns and pervert the image of God, but we will never address the issue at hand. Because the heart is more deceitful than all else and is desperately sick, who could know it? The desire is for the true issue. The true issue behind adultery is that we lust for something God has not intended us to give. Forbidden fruit. That's what Eve did. She got the fruit off the tree, and then it says, and behold, it was good to look at. It's the first thing. She lusted for something that God didn't want her and Adam to have. That fruit. Same thing with adultery. Same thing with anything. And if you're single and sitting there thinking, well, thank goodness I'm single. No, because you've already committed. If you're, this goes beyond this goes beyond the union of a man and woman, because now you're looking at someone, now you're desiring someone that God has not intended for you to get, for you to have. And so we ignore God's commands and we're determining for ourselves what is right and wrong. The definition of lust is an intense or unrestrained sexual craving, an overwhelming desire or craving. Lust is rooted sexually in nature, but you can lust after things that are not sexually in nature. Usually because there's a tie there in your mind to satisfaction. If we cannot control the sin of lust, in the most fundamental of relationships, friends, then we will not be able to control the flesh in any other matter. So Jesus is setting the bar at the very most important spot. And that's the relationship between a husband and wife. But if you can't maintain and control your satisfactions in that plane, then how are you going to expect to maintain and control satisfactions in the plane with your friends, or the plane with the rest of your family, or the plane with God? It's not going to happen. Because the Bible teaches us that we are to control the flesh, discipline the flesh. And that's harsh. Especially in a world that we are inundated with counter messages to that fact. Job would say, for that would be lewdness. Moreover, it would be an iniquity punishable by judges. For it would be a fire that consumes to abaddon. Abaddon is another word for hell. And would uproot all my produce. The thing about lust is it tears down the good things, the blessings that God is putting in your life around you. And if you're lusting after all these other things, and listen to me, if you're looking at your spouse and saying, boy, I wish I had a better trophy wife. Or gee, I wish he would stop doing that. I wish my husband would finally get it right. Because I'm just tired of living with XYZ. We want to tear down. We want to look at our spouse, our significant others, our spouse, and compare them to someone else. That's lust, friends. That's lust. You say, why can't my wife look as good as Fred's wife? Or why can't my husband get in shape, lose that 50 pounds I've been trying to get him to lose? Why can't my husband be as sensitive as I want him to be? Why can't my husband raise the children? Why can't my wife cook the meal better? Why can't my wife stop badgering me all the time? At the heart of lust is a desire to please ourselves. What you're saying is, when you talk that way about your spouse, they're not good enough for me. I deserve better. They're not satisfying my desires the way I want them to. And so I'd rather find greener pastures somewhere if I could, or I'd change them. It's a dangerous thing to sit and say, I wish my husband would change. I wish my wife would change. Now, there are the behaviors in marriages that need to improve. Yes, of course. We all need to learn to grow. We all need to become, learn to help our spouses and be the helpmates that God designed us to be. But if you're sitting there expecting behaviors to change or be modified because it irks you, or because you're not satisfied, or because so-and-so does things better than what your husband or your wife does, then you've missed the whole point of why the relationship is to be why God put the relationship together. Now, you may be saying, well, I can look, but I can't touch. I love to look at the menu. I'm just not going to order. That's such a lie. That is exactly what Jesus is talking about here in the Sermon on the Mount. I hear it this way also, especially in the modern Christian homosexual movement. Well, I have the desire, but I'm not acting on it. No. Where in the Bible does Jesus ever say it's okay to have the desire and entertain the desire? Just don't act on it. Isn't that what Jesus is saying right here? When it comes to murder, when it comes to adultery? He's saying if it's in your heart, deal with it with God. If there's a sin that's creeping into your heart, do not give sin a foothold. Do not allow sin to just kind of wedge itself in. Deal with it. Deal with it directly on. It must deal with it with God. Jesus says in the passage, that's our folly. We let that little seed just kind of drop into our hearts. Be it lust, be it adultery, be it anger, be it greed, be it gluttony, whatever it is. We let that little seed kind of drop into our hearts. And you say, well, I have the desire, but I'm not acting on the desire. Bible says, be renewed, transformed by the renewing of your mind. Doesn't say transformed by the renewing of your actions. Doesn't say transformed by the renewing of your wardrobe. Doesn't say transformed by the renewing of your daily Bible study. That's important. But if you're only doing religious activity, but you have no change in here, then you have still failed to meet the God where and at the place he wants to meet you at. He wants you to read your Bible. He wants you to do your studies, but he wants to use those studies to transform your life, transform you by the renewing of your mind. And so we've got to take it a step further. If you're going to win the spiritual battleground that you're on, it's not going to be 7 habits of highly effective people. It's not going to be 3 steps to the better you. It's not going to be whitening your teeth to make you smile better. It's going to be God working in the very root, the very deepest, most intimate parts of your heart. To say, God, I see it, I reject it, and I'm submitting it to you at the feet of the cross. Because the battleground for your soul is in your mind. Satan will come in and his little minions, and he will dabble in your mind. And he will curse your thoughts. And he will start, guys, gals, couples, he will begin by making you despise your spouse. You say, well, I don't despise my spouse, but if you're sitting there thinking about these things, about your spouse, well, I wish he'd wear better clothes, or I wish he'd lose 25 pounds, or I wish he'd stop this, or I wish he'd do that. Satan's in the battleground in your mind right now. Our thoughts exalt themselves against the knowledge of God. You understand that? Our sexual fidelity is among the most core issues of our lives, and it's rooted in a singularly devoted heart. Deuteronomy 10:12. So now, Israel, what does Yahweh your God ask from you? But to fear Yahweh your God, walk in all his ways and love him, and to serve Yahweh your God with all your heart and soul and with all your soul. You shall therefore love Yahweh your God and keep his charge and his statutes, his judgments, and his commandments all your days. God was telling Israel, I want your complete devotion. I want your complete singular devotion and unity towards me. That's the same kind of covenant that we make with our spouse as we stand before them at the altar. I am going to love you. I am going to serve you. I am going to protect you all the days of my life till death do us part. Jesus says, but if your right eye makes you stumble, tear it out and throw it from you. For it's better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than for the whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand makes you stumble, cut it off and throw it from you. For it's better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to throw into hell. Now, obviously, Jesus is using a hyperbole here. He's using figure of speech. Otherwise, there'd be people coming into heaven every day with arms missing and eyes missing and legs missing. You know, we look like the walking wounded coming in through battle. But the point of the matter is, Jesus is using repugnant issues to show us just how repugnant sin is. He's saying it would be better for you to cut off your arm than to allow sin to rule over you. The addict can never entertain the drug. The alcoholic can never be around the drink. I know guys who can't go to the beach because it's too much for them. And what Jesus is saying is remove the object of your lust. Hold yourself accountable. And that accountability must always begin with your spouse. If you're harboring secrets from your spouse, that's your first step to healing. The cause of marital discontentment, according to Daniel Dorini, is discontentment is less my spouse's flaws than it is a hard-hearted response to those flaws. What the Bible tells us to do is to champion our spouse. Championing them. Culture says, get the best partner you can. But that breeds discontentment. Right? Drives out the love and respect. Celebrate the marriage God has given you. Because discontentment is prideful, but contentment loves your spouse. Contentment says, the sickness has been strong, has been harsh, but I will not leave my spouse's side. These times are difficult. The kids are about ready to drive us into complete disarray, but I will stand with my spouse. The situation is awful, but I'm going to stand with my spouse. I messed up, but I know my spouse is going to stand with me, so I'm going to stand with them. 1 Corinthians 7:3 says, the husband must fulfill his duty to his wife, and likewise also the wife to her husband. In other words, it's important for the couple to help each other, support each other. And that includes in the sexual union of a man and woman. So the desire for God is us to enjoy his blessings. And there are many, many blessings. Sin blinds us to the blessings of God. And it blinds us when we're focusing on the lusts of our hearts instead of the goodness of God. Paul says, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is dignified, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence and if anything worthy of praise, consider these things. And 2 Corinthians 10 says, as we tear down speculations and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. Underline that word, take every thought captive. That means that you are responsible to monitor and to hold accountable what's going on up here. And in your covenant relationship with God and your spouse, allow the transforming of your life by the renewal of your mind. Flee sexuality, every other sin that a man commits outside the body, but the sexual immoral man sins against his own body. But you, O man of God, flee from these things. Here again, we see the word Paul used, flee from these things and pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, perseverance, and gentleness. Be subject, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. You know what the Bible says? We're not alone in the fight. We're not alone in the fight. And yes, I haven't said it yet, but it goes without saying that being married is hard. It's hard. And there's so many things that we could cover again. You'd miss out on the buffet. What do I do with a spouse that is ungodly? What do I do when my spouse is addicted to porn? What do I do in a relationship of this? And there's so many circumstances that is coming against a marital relationship right now. But we can start with a mindset of devotion, with a mindset of championing our spouse, with a mindset of being singularly devoted to the one that God gave to us, and say, I am going to fight the spiritual battle. I am going to fight the good fight in my marriage today and win the race. And I know there are many, many couples here that have been together for a long, long time. And what a beautiful image of God's love that it is. And to watch God work in those situations. I know, my in-laws right here. Been married many, many years, and it's been a joy for almost 30 years now to have a relationship with them and to watch that relationship at work. And it makes me so proud to see that. And many others who have cared for sick loved ones, who have stood by them through their last days, and that's one of the joys of a pastor, is to see that come to be and to see that champion. And Andrea and I have been married 28 years this July. And you know what? The road has been, I wish I could say the road has been like, Autobahn. And a lot of times there has been those days. Yeah, sometimes it is like Evel Knievel. We're going to just jump off that cliff, aren't we, sweetie? You guys know what I'm talking about. And somehow God has used that to fashion us to be more like him, to tenderize us, to prepare us for journeys that we would have never made it alone. Jesus' desire is for us always to live under the immense blessings of God. And one of the things I love about being married and being married for 28 years is to experience those blessings. And they're transformed. The victories are so much sweeter when you have your life soulmate beside you. And the challenges, they're still challenging. But man, it's like, okay, we can do this. We can do this. Together we can make this happen. Together we can overcome this. And the mountain may seem like, a gazillion miles high. But we say, you know what? We can make this happen. God with us. And there are those days when she says, Brad Reeves, don't you do that. I say, okay, God, you put her there for a reason. With that, will you value? I want to challenge each and every one of you, if you're married, to value your marriage so much that you would reject any sin that wants to come into that union, that wants to come and attack that bond that is between you and your spouse. Guard it, fight for it, because it matters. And there are generations behind us that are watching. And they're looking and they're trying to find meaning. And they're living in a world that has taken the complete meaning of what it means to be married away. And then they look at those of us that have fought the good fight. And you stick with the same person 60 plus years. Holy cow. That's amazing. That's only a God thing, right? And there's generations that are looking at that and they're wanting that. They desire that. Next week, we're going to talk about what happens when that bond is broken. And if there's been failure here this morning, don't leave here beat up. Because God is a God of mercy. He's a God of second chances. He's a God that loves. He loves through sin. Somehow, it's amazing how he can just completely when the Bible says God works all things for the good of those that love him, it means all things. It means in all our failures and all of our demise and all of how we've messed things up and then things that we've done in life that we regret, God still works the good in that. And for those of you that have spouses in glory that have gone ahead, take heart. Take heart. There's still so much honor in that life that you guys lived. And the best is yet to come. Because we're going to get there together in eternity. And Jesus says there's no marriage in eternity. But I promise, there is going to be something between that union. Something special that wasn't there, that won't be there between other people in heaven. If it wasn't important, God wouldn't have made it so important here on earth.